Joining us now, 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. Mr. Yang, I hope you can hear me. I know we were having audio problems. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. Thank you, John.
Fantastic. The robots are working for both of us this morning. I appreciate that. So if I can get your reaction to this really big news, which is that Michael Bloomberg and his $50 billion filing paperwork to enter the presidential race. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm friendly with Mike, and he's a great philanthropist, was a really stellar mayor. But I will say it's going to be very, very difficult for him to jump in right now and somehow replace the thousands of conversations that many of the candidates have had with voters in New Hampshire and Iowa and around the country with ad buys. There are limits to what money can do. We're seeing some of the limits of what money can do with other candidates. And so I think he's going to have his work cut out for him if he jumps in.
What do you think it changes in the Democratic race?
Well, it's probably going to change the price of advertising in some of the early states, and certainly Mike has a very valuable perspective to offer. As an American, I'm glad that he's looking at the race because he's an extraordinary leader and has done a lot for the country.
You know what I'm interested in? If he gets on the debate stage and you are there beside him, I'm curious how you will explain to Michael Bloomberg why he deserves to receive $1,000 a month of your universal basic income, which is a big part of your campaign. So why will you tell Michael Bloomberg that he should get $1,000 a month?
Well, it's opt-in, so he doesn't need to take it. Knowing Mike, he probably wouldn't because he has bigger fish to fry. Though you don't get to be a billionaire by turning down $1,000 a month, so you never know. But the fact is that when the dividend it is distributed in Alaska every year, it goes to the richest Alaskan and the poorest, and that makes it universal. It removes any stigma. It's not like you're getting it, I'm not getting it. You don't have to keep track of how much people are making. And that's part of what's made the petroleum dividend in Alaska universally popular for decades.
So you, talking about money, have your first big money campaign ad up and running in Iowa. Let's take a look here.
President Obama named Andrew a champion of change, and his ideas are a blueprint for a new way forward. An economy where big tech and Wall Street are held accountable. A healthcare system with Medicare for all that takes on drug companies to lower prices. A fight against climate change that confronts big polluters.
We have to rewrite the rules of the 21st century so that they work for us.
So it's interesting. That ad was really an introduction. You've been running for months now. That ad there was fairly general. It struck me as fairly general, promoting a lot of the ideas that most of the Democratic candidates are. And while you had the words universal basic income up on the screen, you didn't really talk about it. I'm just curious about why you chose to talk about what you did.
Well, when we did some research, John, we found out that most Iowans still were getting to know me. And so, as you say, this was very much an introduction ad. We're going to have more ads in the days to come that dig a little bit deeper. But we found out that people wanted to learn more about me and my background, and so that's what this ad is meant to provide.
You have come out in support of the impeachment proceedings, but you've also talked about the risk to Democrats focusing too much on it. And I'm just trying to figure out what ultimately that means. Does that mean if you were in the House of Representatives, you would vote to impeach the president? And if you were a Democratic senator, that you would vote to convict him? Is that true?
Those things are true, but we have to face facts that not a single Republican crossed party lines to vote for impeachment proceedings, which strongly suggest that it's going to run aground in the Senate. And all of the oxygen is going to be around Donald Trump and not around a new way forward and a new vision for the country that Americans will actually get excited about. That's how we solve the problems that got him elected. That's how we beat him in 2020. And that's where our focus should be right now as Democrats or Americans.
So we're getting closer to Iowa every day. I'm curious what your closing message will be in Iowa to the Iowa voters.
My closing message to Iowans will be that we have left an awful mess for the next generation, for our kids, and that we have to do better. We have to create a new way forward that will enable us to be able to look our kids in the eyes and say, your country loves you, your country values you, and you are going to be all right. And if we can say that honestly, then we will win in 2020.
You know, just to wrap this up or go back to the beginning here, Michael Bloomberg obviously is getting in the race because for whatever reason, he doesn't think the Democratic primary field is strong enough. What do you think he sees?
You know, I can't speak for Mike, but if you look at the numbers, I think he's concerned that there are a couple of frontrunners that have economic perspectives that differ substantially from his, and that he wants to make sure that his perspective gets represented. You know, this is a democracy. You can't fault someone for putting their hat in the ring. And I believe that Mike has a lot to add. He's done a lot for the country over the last number of years.
Do you think that he's right that perhaps Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, some of their economic models, are too far from the mainstream? In your opinion, where does Andrew Yang sit in comparison to those?
Well, I think that we need to have 21st century solutions for 21st century problems, not solutions that have not worked in the past. And unfortunately, some of the candidates in the field seem like they're reaching backwards for solutions to today's problems, and they don't seem to have a sharp understanding of how technology is transforming our way of life, and particularly the decimation of millions of manufacturing jobs in the Midwest that led to Donald Trump's victory in 2016.
Andrew Yang, we appreciate you being with us this morning. Thanks so much for being here. I hope people listen to what you said about ad prices, because you're absolutely right. That will be the immediate proximate effect of Michael Bloomberg's entry into the race.
That's the biggest impact that we're looking at, John. I'll see you soon.
All right, thanks.
I also like the point that he made that Michael Bloomberg didn't become a billionaire by turning away $1,000. So what would he do with that money?
But look, I mean it. When they're on the debate stage together, that is a question I would ask Andrew Yang if Michael Bloomberg deserves his universal basic income. So it'll be an interesting juxtaposition there.
It will be indeed.